Daddy? Sales plus tips equals enough revenue to defeat the Great Meatball.
I need a beer, okay.
And enough money to abandon disposable restaurants whilst yelling at your awful co-chefs.
I'm bringing a tortilla.
Put it on the stupid plate. Now give me the freaking rice. No!
Holy shit! Help! The bucket! Put it down! Fuck! We need a plate!
The key to Overcooked's satisfaction is the mastery. The mastery necessitates both the challenge and the pacing. Overcooked challenges players with crazy stage hazards and obstacles, the mixing and matching of recipes, and the money, essentially points, required to earn stars. Often the players earn only 1 out of 3 stars from the kitchen chaos. But from practice and dedicated teamwork, you and your friends will master each and every dish, stage hazard, and obstacle. The 3 stars are now achievable because everyone screaming has converted and streamlined into role specialization, communication, and an overall understanding of the level. Colton, if you bring down our team, I'm gonna freaking destroy you.
Oh my god.
Oh, no!
Get the dicks out of your mouth!
The team creates a shorthand communication and call-out system, because no matter how well you're working together, the stages contain too much intentional visual clutter to know what the crap is going on in more than one place at a time.
Here.
I need more meat.
I'm sending meat over.
Yeah, you send the meat over. I'm gonna wash dishes.
Meat coming over.
This is the last meat. I'm gonna put some more veggies over to go over the time being.
The players zone off their own claimed areas, specialize in certain tasks, and call out important events and updates, like if a cooked pot of rice needs plated. However, the role specialization is malleable, so each player needs to adapt accordingly. The game constantly offers new challenges and twists player expectations, so the team's currently effective strategies require tweaks or a new brainstorming session. In addition, the variety in the levels, recipes, hazards, and obstacles ensures that the teamwork doesn't stagnate, but rather remains fresh and adapts to the new environments and strategies. The second key to Overcooked's mastery is the pacing. Early on in the game, 1 star is enough to continue to the next level. But as the game progresses, the star requirements become increasingly demanding. By the time the end game rolls around, most of the 1 or 2 starred levels must be replayed for the full 3 stars to unlock the future levels. The team's desire and dedication to improve results in an increase in the individual's skill and teamwork capabilities. So later in their journey, the players are truly put to the test by traveling back to their previously established franchises to master and 3-star each location. This backtracking road trip also balances the more difficult newer levels with the generally easier, but still demanding, older ones. Overcooked is a balanced, paced, challenging, and satisfactory game that is spearheaded by the desire to master the varying dishes, stage gimmicks, and overall teamwork.
His character is, the raccoon's in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Is there no handicap bonus?
Oh my god.
Enter Overcooked 2.
Why are the birds? It's a tutorial. Why are the birds not food based? I guess Kevin's not. I mean, no, I guess birds are food, and and dogs are food.
Alright, chefs, let's send out an order. Oh, wait, that one order already gave us 1 star? Well, I guess we're good for the day, boys. So, how are the kids? Oh, they died from food poisoning because you're an inexperienced chef? Well, I'm glad to hear the family's doing okay, man. Overcooked 2 strips the challenge for many of its levels. The stages aren't played and replayed for mastery in teamwork and meal preparation, but rather to grab the stars and move on. Often I find myself wondering how we managed a stupid amount of points above the 3-star requirement. The potential improvement, teamwork, and replayability felt stifled. On the other hand, some of the levels actually challenge and take multiple attempts to achieve the 3-star ranking. There's a clear dichotomy between the challenging levels and the trivial ones, and the game oscillates between the two as if it has no idea what kind of experience it wants to establish.
Oh,
Just
no.
go right. Just go right.
We gotta find that red thing.
Who fucking care? Oh, I guess we do take.
I see it.
Oh wow, that's such a puzzle, dude. It's like
That's why. Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. There's no point to it.
Overcooked 1 is a deep-rooted case study concerning engagement through challenge, and how that challenge promotes ever-shifting team strategies, resolute communication, and an overall satisfaction in mastery. Overcooked 2 offers a comparable engagement through about half of its levels. The other half offers a triviality that refocuses the experience from the game to chillin' with friends. And to praise that would be to praise my undeserving friends and not the game. Overcooked 2 is a shell of its predecessor. While the game does introduce its own varied stages and gimmicks, the occasional immersive stage transition, and the useful throw-in mechanic, overall, the engagement is inconsistent and cascades to underwhelming teamwork, a shortage of strategy, and a lack of necessity for communication.
Why did the bread want salads?
So they can fuck on them and make a sandwich. Am I wrong?
Dicey Dungeons is a roguelike deck building game. The deck building aspect does not comprise cards, or a deck at all actually, but rather an assortment of equipment ready to activate from dice insertion. The developers' efforts were invested in ensuring an oxymoronic strategy dice game, and surprisingly, Dicey Dungeons minimizes the dice's intrinsic luck factor. The player can almost always use each dice roll to trigger one of a multitude of equipment abilities. However, once you've played through the game once, you've seen all there is to see. The class-specific equipment varies, but overall, once the player discovers where to prioritize dice for the mostly not randomly generated equipment, the game becomes a routine. Dicey Dungeons feels like it's playing itself. The routine also invalidates most of the enemy encounters. I never took enemies into consideration because each fight plays just like the last. Whether I'm inflicted by poison, burn, freeze, shock, weaken, curse, silence, lock, or blind, the strategy I follow remains the same, but less of it can be executed. The status effects are mostly a constant annoyance every turn that spurs a single defining question. How long can the enemy prolong the fight? My fight against Aurora is a good example, where I'm constantly either locked, so I can't use some or most of my dice, frozen, so the dice are turned into ones, or shocked, so 2 dice instead of 1 are required to use an equipment. Or my fight against Kraken. Despite my shocks against his equipment, he still manages to blind most of my dice, curse me so one of my attacks will almost inevitably fail, and invest in his attack that increases in damage throughout the fight. Needless to say, Lady Luck wasn't on my side for these fights. My overall strategy didn't change when the enemy restricted my dice and equipment. The only difference is I now have to prioritize, or guess, which equipment to invest my dice in. However, prioritizing which equipment to use first doesn't mean much, because it's the same prioritization and strategy used throughout the run. The enemies don't wildly vary in actions, and the equipment isn't designed to handle variety in actions. The status effects simply prolong the fight until time itself allows the enemy to kill us, and to be thrust into that situation does come down to luck. The Secret Bear class further illuminates how prevalent the enemy's strategy to prolong is. The bear's entire kit centers around burst damage, so the enemies never have a chance to breathe and the game becomes trivial. Now switch off to a different class and the enemies that can prolong fights become a problem again. If the player isn't capable of bursting down the enemy, then the enemy may have a chance to milk the player dry with a potent status effect. And this prolonging strategy is by far the most prominent method by which I've died in Dicey dungeons. So overall, despite the minor deck building aspects and the roguelite elements, Dicey Dungeons is mindless and monotonous. Each new run devolves into the player taking the given equipment from a relatively small pool and repeating the same strategy over and over with it. At least until the crippling status effects roll in, then just repeat the same strategy but less of it. Sea of Solitude portrays its symbolism as a very in-your-face, childish journey that lacks any subtext.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything! Leave me alone!
Exactly! You didn't do anything! You never do!
The foolish, reprehensible actions of the main character, Kay, completely belittle any life lessons we might glean from the story. At the end of Sea of Solitude, Kay revels in her newfound life. She finally boards the boat traveling out of the fantasy in which she was engulfed. She leaves behind solitude in all of its danger, gloom, and isolation. But at no point did the game guide us through this transition via meaningful gameplay or strong narrative. While traversing the bridge between her lonely and depressive past to her new life, Kay breaks down. Does the game show us this through a deeply poignant revelation or some non-cliche, visually stunning display of emotion that can speak for itself? No, an achievement. Thank goodness for that achievement. Otherwise, how would I have known that she was having a hard time? I wouldn't be able to tell. Not at all. I didn't know. Did you know? No, of course not. The Chapter 11 isolation title also helps, cause I couldn't tell from all of this hard-hitting symbolism.
I'm stuck here in the dark.
The sea-dwelling antagonistic monster stalks Kay and represents her deep-rooted self-doubt, regret, fear of loneliness, and raging teenager emotions. Kay copes in her darkest, solitary hour by giving into the monster's relentless, not-so-subtle dialogue and believing that everything the monster says is true. Yeah, you should be eating. Here, eat me. There's the game over now. Kay soon finds that the solitude she was so afraid of is exactly what she needed to reflect on herself and the range of emotions swirling quite literally around her. She isolates herself in the Sea of Solitude fantasy so she can finally spend some time to organize her thoughts into something coherent and discernible. So finally, after reaching close to the end of her journey and talking with the voices in her head, she learns to let go.
You need to let go.
For the third time during the game.
No! For the first time, I don't feel lonely. I can't lose you.
While the idea of taking personal time to contemplate and piece together a broken life is perfectly normal and expected, a fantasy can't hide her irresponsibility. Her actions are undeserving of the audience's sympathy. Sea of Solitude's 2 lessons convey Kay's actions and irresponsibility. The first lesson is to not be a horrible human being by ignoring your little brother when he says he wants to kill himself. The second lesson is learning to let go.
That's where sometimes you have to let go. I don't know. So you're able to move forward and heal.
Only for Kay to completely forget about it a second later when confronted by her boyfriend. Despite the friendly reminder from the oyster monster, or at least the terrible monster impression.
Kay, think about your parents. Did that teach you nothing?
Kay tries to carry some of the boyfriend's burden and blames herself for everything bad in his life, and finally learns to let go. After excruciatingly predictable and surface level dialogue and mundane repetitive gameplay.
I feel like they could at least mix it up a little bit.
To Sea of Solitude's credit, a couple of Kay's experiences are reflected through the gameplay. Kay's frustration with the fish monster, for instance, carries over to the player. We wait and wait and wait for the fish monster to wiggle away from us so we can finally swim to the next platform. Click next page in this visual novel and that's the game. None of the solitude or contemplation extends to the player. There's nothing to meditate on while driving your personal rowboat. There's no exploration of your inner, subtle emotions that are difficult to really put into words. The absence of atmosphere and overall mechanics fails to convey anything, let alone feelings of isolation, loneliness, or solitude.
You worthless piece of shit. You have no idea what you're doing, do you? As usual.
I'm trying.
Sea of Solitude comes across as a simple, predictable, and pretentious story, rather than an experience of life lessons that the player could ruminate on through actual gameplay. In the end, you sitting there watching this video is more of a solitary experience than an entire sea of it.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
I'm 5 shots deep right now.
Yeah, dude, I'm feeling. I'm
feeling it. I'm finally political. Why the fuck can I say
Political, you dumbass.
No, it's from a. It's a meme.
Oh my god.
What, you not pronouncing something because you've been drinking as a meme?
No.
Because it is now.
No, it's from a video. It's from a video. Dude, where's my vape? I want my vape.
We need 3.
Yeah, we need 3 right now.
I feel buzzed.
Maybe just because you had 5 shots in like a half hour. You fucking.
I did not even a half hour. I took 5 shots in 15 minutes. Dumbass.
Yeah, that's a fucking problem.
Dude, it's the only way I can feel anything.
Hit the A button. Hit the vape instead of the A button.
I thought you said hit the vape.
Colton, if you bring down our team, I'm gonna freaking destroy you.